The girl had stopped crying an hour ago, not because the hurt had passed, because there was no one left to hear it. She sat in the dust beside the stable's collapsed east wall, knees pulled to her chest, head down. 6 years old, maybe 7, the kind of thing that came from missing meals, not from being tall. Her left sleeve had torn at the shoulder. 3 pale scars ran down her forearm, jagged and old, like something had tried to write a word in her skin, and quit halfway through. The afternoon sun pressed down hard. Cicada screamed in the dry grass. The stable smelled of rotted wood and animal piss from years back. She didn't look up when the shadow fell across her. Boots, spurs, a woman's voice low and rough. "Girl." The child's fingers tightened around her own wrist. She didn't answer. Lyra Kane had been riding fence line for 3 hours when she saw the shape beside the stable. At first, she thought it was a calf. Something small and dark huddled against the wood. She nudged her ember forward, squinting against the late sun. The property had been abandoned for 2 seasons. Old Whitaker's place before the bank took it. Lyra had bought the land in April, but hadn't torn the stable down yet. Kept meaning to. She was 50 yards out when she realized it wasn't livestock. It was a child. Lyra reined in. Sat still in the saddle. The girl, she could tell now it was a girl, her dark skin dusted with earth, coiled tight like a spring. Hadn't moved, hadn't looked up, just sat there with her head down, arms wrapped around her knees like she was holding herself together. Lyra's jaw tightened. She scanned the horizon. No wagon, no horse, no adult in sight. She swung down from Ember and walked closer, boots crunching in the dry August grass. The cicadas were loud enough to split the air. Dust rose with each step. "Girl," she said. Nothing. Lyra stopped 10 feet away. The child's clothes were filthy. Shirt torn at the shoulder, trousers too big, cinched with rope, no shoes. Her hair was dark, matted, sun-bleached at the ends. Lyra crouched, slow the way you would near a spooked horse. "Where's your folks?" The girl's fingers tightened on her wrist. That was all. Lyra studied her. 6, maybe 7 years old. Thin enough to see the bones in her shoulders. Face streaked with dust and dry tears. She wasn't crying now. That was worse somehow. Like she'd used up whatever part of her made sound. "You hurt?" The girl finally lifted her head. Dark eyes too old for her face. Watching Lyra the way a woman watches a poker hand. Measuring, weighing, deciding. Lyra felt something cold move through her chest. "I'm not going to hurt you," she said, quieter now. "But you can't sit out here. Sun's going to cook you." The girl's gaze didn't waver, didn't blink. Lyra shifted her weight, glanced at the stable. The east wall had caved in last winter. The rest was barely standing. No water, no shade worth a damn. "You got a name?" Silence. Lyra sighed through her nose. She straightened, looked around again. Still nothing. No dust from a wagon. No voices. Just the wind and the insects and the slow burn of the day dying. She turned back to the girl. "All right, come on." She reached down. The girl flinched, sharp, instinctive, and her torn sleeve pulled back further. Lyra froze. 3 scars, pale white against sun-kissed skin, running down the girl's left forearm in a jagged line. The kind a barbed fence makes when something pulls too hard or a broken bone tears through. Lyra knew the pattern. She'd seen it before. Her breath stopped. 8 years ago, Selena, 9 years old, fell from a spooked mare in the east pasture, landed wrong. The bone broke through just above the wrist. 3 places. Lyra had carried her to the house, blood soaking through the makeshift bandage. Called for the doctor too late. Infection set in. 3 days later, Selena was dead. The scars had looked just like these. Lyra stared at the girl's arm, her pulse hammered in her throat. For a moment, one insane, impossible moment. She thought, Selena. But no, Selena was in the ground. Had been for 8 years. This was someone else's child, someone else's disaster. Still, Lyra blinked hard, pulled herself back. The girl was watching her now, eyes wide, waiting for something. Judgment, violence, abandonment. Easy, Lyra said, voice rough. She pulled her hand back, gave the girl space. I'm not going to grab you. She straightened, walked to her horse, pulled the canteen from the saddle, came back, crouched again, held it out. Drink. The girl didn't move. Lyra uncapped it, took a sip herself, then held it out again. Waited 10 seconds, 20. Finally, the girl reached for it. Her hand shook. She drank in gulps, water spilling down her chin. When she finished, she handed it back without a word. Where are your people? Lyra asked again. The girl shook her head. Once final. Lyra's chest tightened. She looked at the scars again, still visible on the girl's arm. Identical. 3 lines, same angle, same spacing. It doesn't mean anything, she told herself. Accidents happen, but her hands were cold. Can you ride? Lyra asked. The girl nodded. Good. Lyra stood, walked to Ember. She was patient, old enough not to spook. She swung up into the saddle, then held her hand down. Come on. The girl stood slowly like her legs weren't sure they'd hold. She walked to the horse, stared up at Lyra's hand, then she took it. Lyra pulled her up in one motion, settled her in front of the saddle. The girl weighed almost nothing, her small back pressed against Lyra's chest. Lyra could feel her shaking. She turned Ember toward home. The sun was sinking now, orange and heavy. The shadows stretched long across the land. Lyra hadn't carried a child in 8 years. She tried not to think about how familiar it felt. As they rode, the girl's head tilted back slightly, just enough to look up at Lyra's face, still studying her, still deciding. Lyra didn't look down, but she felt it. The weight of that gaze, like something broken, asking if it was worth fixing. The house was too big for one woman. Lyra had known that for years. 14 rooms built when she thought Selena would grow up here, bring home a husband, fill the place with grandchildren. Now most of the doors stayed closed. She brought the girl in through the kitchen, set her down by the iron stove. The housekeeper, Mrs. Ilara Voss, looked up from kneading dough, flour dusting her thick forearms. Lord have mercy, she breathed. Draw a bath, Lyra said. And find something that'll fit her. Who is she? Don't know yet. Mrs. Ilara wiped her hands on her apron, walked over. She looked the girl up and down. The torn clothes, the dirty face, the bare feet. Her expression softened. Poor lamb. Come on then. The girl looked at Lyra. Go on, Lyra said. She won't bite. Ah. The girl followed her out. Didn't make a sound. Lyra stood in the kitchen for a long moment after they left. The evening light slanted through the window, gold and tired. She could hear water running upstairs. Mrs. Ilara's voice low and gentle. She walked to her study, poured 2 fingers of whiskey, didn't drink it, sat down at her desk, and stared at the drawer on the right side. The one she hadn't opened in 8 years. Not tonight. She drank the whiskey in one swallow. Dr. Myra Hale arrived the next morning. She came in her black bag and mud-spattered skirts, hair pinned tight, eyes sharp as a hawk. She'd been doctoring in the territory for 6 years, one of 3 women physicians west of Lamy. Lyra trusted her because she didn't waste words. The girl was sitting at the kitchen table eating oatmeal slowly like she was still deciding if it was real. This her? Myra asked. Yeah. She set her bag down, pulled out a chair, sat across from the girl. I'm Dr. Hale. I'm going to look at you. All right. The girl glanced at Lyra. Lyra nodded. Myra checked her eyes, her throat, her chest. Listened to her lungs, felt her ribs, her belly. Then she took her left arm gently and pushed the sleeve up. The scars were clean in the daylight. 3 white lines raised slightly following the bone. "How old are these?" she asked the girl. She held up 2 fingers. 2 years. Myra ran her thumb along the largest scar. "Broke the arm?" She nodded. "Clean break or compound?" The girl just looked at her. "Did the bone come through the skin?" Another nod. Myra glanced at Lyra. Her face was unreadable. She turned back to the girl. "Someone set this properly, kept it clean. You were lucky." She released her arm. Stood. "She's undernourished but not starving. Dehydrated. No infection, no lice, no fever. She'll be fine." Lyra walked her to the porch. "What are you going to do?" she asked, pulling on her gloves. "Find her people. And if no one claims her," Lyra looked out at the land. The cattle were dark shapes on the hills, moving slow. "Then I'll figure it out." Myra studied her for a long moment. "Lyra, be careful." "Of what?" "Of needing this too much." And she left before she could answer. No one claimed her. Lyra sent word to the county sheriff, the land office, the 3 churches within 20 miles. Posted a notice in town, described the girl, age, build, the scars, nothing. Nothing. The girl stayed. 3 days in, Lyra started noticing things. The way the girl stood in doorways, not blocking them, just there watching, learning. The way she folded her napkin at breakfast, mimicking Lyra's movements. Exactly. The way she listened when Lyra spoke to the ranch hands, head tilted, absorbing every word. The girl didn't talk much, but she wasn't mute. She answered yes or no when asked. Sometimes she'd hum low, tuneless, like she was soothing herself. On the 4th morning, Lyra found her in the study. The girl was standing by the bookshelf, holding something small, a tin whistle, tarnished silver, dented at the mouthpiece. Lyra's throat closed. "Selena's whistle." "Put that back," she said. "Too sharp." The girl flinched, set it down carefully, started to leave. "Wait." The girl stopped. Lyra crossed the room, picked up the whistle, turned it over in her hands. It was cold, light. She hadn't touched it in years. "My daughter," she said quietly. The girl's eyes widened slightly. "She used to play it badly." Lyra almost smiled. Almost. Drove the dogs crazy. She held it out. "Go ahead." And the girl took it, lifted it to her lips, blew. The sound was shrill, off-key, absolutely terrible. And Lyra laughed. It shocked her. The sound coming out of her own chest. Rough, sudden, real. She couldn't remember the last time. The girl blinked at her, whistle still raised, a question on her face. "You're worse than she was," Lyra said, and the warmth in her voice surprised them both. That night, Lyra opened the drawer. The leather satchel was still there, small, worn, brass buckle tarnished. She lifted it out, set it on the desk, unbuckled it with stiff fingers. Inside, a wooden horse carved from pine. Selena had carried it everywhere. A folded piece of paper, a drawing, a house, a tree, a crooked sun, a letter Selena had started and never finished. "Dear Mama, today Lyra's vision blurred." She pressed her palms against her eyes, breathed through her teeth. The grief was an old wound, 8 years deep, but it still bled when touched. She didn't hear the girl until she felt the presence. Lyra looked up. The girl stood in the doorway barefoot, nightshirt too big, watching. Their eyes met. Lyra didn't speak, didn't wipe her face, just sat there, caught. The girl didn't move, didn't ask, just stood witness. After a moment, she turned and padded back down the hall, silent as smoke. Lyra closed the satchel, buckled it, put it back in the drawer, but she didn't lock it. The next morning, when Lyra came downstairs, she found a wildflower on her desk, small, yellow, stems still wet from the grass. She picked it up, looked toward the kitchen where the girl was eating breakfast. Head down, pretending not to notice. Lyra carried the flower upstairs, opened the drawer, unbuckled the satchel, and placed the wildflower inside next to the wooden horse. 10 days passed before Lyra took the girl into town. She'd been putting it off, telling herself the girl needed time to settle, that the roads were too dusty, that there was work to do. The truth was simpler. She didn't want to share her yet, but the girl needed clothes, shoes, things missing, Lyra couldn't mend or make do with anymore. They rode in on a Saturday morning, early September. The air had cooled overnight. First hint of autumn coming. The girl sat in front of Lyra on Ember, holding the saddle horn with both hands. She'd learned to ride in the past week, natural at it, balanced. The town of Willowford Crossing wasn't much. 2 streets, bank, general store, land office, saloon, church, maybe 300 people. When the ranchers came in, Lyra tied Ember outside Harlan's dry goods, helped the girl down. People were already staring. Mrs. Breyer coming out of the post office. Old Harlan Greer sweeping his porch. The Landry brothers loading feed into their wagon. All of them stopped, watched. Lyra put her hand on the girl's shoulder. "Come on." And inside the store smelled of leather and lamp oil and the penny candy Harlan kept in jars by the register. The floorboards creaked. Light came through the front windows in dusty shafts. "Morning, Ms. Kane," Harlan called from behind the counter. He was a big man, red-faced, perpetually cheerful. His smile faltered when he saw the girl. "And who's this?" "Need clothes," Lyra said. "Shirts, trousers, boots, whatever fits." Harlan glanced between them. "Right, sure. I'll get the measuring tape." And while Harlan fussed over sizes, the girl stood silent, arms at her sides, letting herself be turned and measured like a calf at auction. Her eyes tracked everything. The shelves, the door, the other customers pretending not to watch. Lyra picked out 2 shirts, 2 pairs of trousers, a wool coat for winter, good boots, broken in enough they wouldn't blister. A hat. "Put it on my account," she told Harlan. "Of course, Ms. Kane." "Of course." Harlan wrapped the clothes in brown paper, tied it with string, handed it over, then quieter. "Heard you took someone in." "I did." "From where?" "Don't know yet." Harlan's smile was strained now. "Well, that's charitable of you." Lyra didn't answer. She took the package. Turned toward the door. That's when Eloan Blackwood walked in. Blackwood was 52, clean-shaven, silver hair combed back with pomade. She wore a black suit, pressed and spotless despite the dust outside, gold watch chain across her vest, polished shoes that clicked on the floorboards. She smiled when she saw Lyra. It didn't reach her eyes. "Miss Kane." "Good morning, Blackwood." Blackwood's gaze dropped to the girl, lingered. "And who do we have here?" "No one you need to know." "Heard you taken in a stray?" Blackwood stepped closer. The girl shifted slightly behind Lyra's leg. "Very noble, though there are proper channels for these things. She's fine where she is." "I'm sure." Blackwood's smile widened. "But the county has procedures. Orphans, abandoned children. They're meant to be registered with the land office. Documented, placed in appropriate care." Lyra's jaw tightened. "She's got care." "Oh, I don't doubt your intentions. But intentions aren't legal guardianship." Blackwood tilted her head. "You haven't filed any papers, have you?" "Didn't know I needed to." "Well, now you do." Blackwood glanced at the girl again. Her eyes were pale, calculating. "How old is she?" 6. "Name?" The girl said nothing. "She doesn't talk much," Lyra said. "Pity." Blackwood straightened her cuffs. "I'll speak to the county clerk." Make sure everything's proper. Wouldn't want any misunderstandings. She tipped her hat, walked out. The bell above the door chimed. Lyra stood there, package under her arm, anger coiling in her chest like a snake. That woman's poison, Harlan muttered. Lyra didn't disagree. Elder Sagebrook was waiting when they got back to the ranch. She sat on the porch rail, legs dangling, a carved pipe in one hand. 63 years old, face like eroded stone, long grey braids. She wore a wool shirt, leather vest, denims, frontier clothes, same as anyone. But her eyes were older than the hills. You've been busy, Sagebrook said, as Lyra dismounted. Help the girl down. Didn't expect you today. Heard you have a new shadow. The girl looked up at Sagebrook, curious, but not afraid. Sagebrook smiled. Come here, little one. The girl walked over. Sagebrook reached into her vest, pulled out something small, placed it in the girl's hand. A carved horse, pinewood, smooth, the size of a thumb. Manet etched in tiny lines. The girl's eyes widened. She looked up at Sagebrook, then at Lyra. It's yours, Sagebrook said. Keep it safe. The girl closed her hand around it, nodded once, then she ran inside, footsteps light on the porch boards. Sagebrook watched her go. She doesn't speak. Not much, but she listens. Yeah. Sagebrook slid off the rail, stood facing Lyra. The banker came to see me yesterday asking questions. 1. Blackwood. She wanted to know if I'd seen anyone abandon a child. Said she was conducting an inquiry. Sagebrook's expression darkened. She's looking for a reason. A reason for what? To take the girl. Lyra's blood went cold. On what grounds? Any she can invent. Blackwood doesn't do things for justice. She does them for control. Sagebrook tapped her pipe against the rail. Ash drifted to the ground. You care for this child? It wasn't a question. She's got no one else. That's not what I asked. Lyra looked toward the house. Through the window, she could see the girl showing Mrs. Ilara the carved horse. She was smiling, wiping her hands on her apron. Yeah, Lyra said quietly. I do. Sagebrook was silent for a long moment. Then the scar does not return the child. Lyra's throat tightened. But your heart can return to life. Sagebrook placed a hand on Lyra's shoulder. Firm, warm. Don't let fear win twice. What if I fail her? Then you will have tried. That is more than silence. Sagebrook stepped back, started toward her horse. Then she paused. Blackwood will come again, and she will not come alone. She rode off into the late afternoon light, dust rising behind her. Lyra stood on the porch, watching until she disappeared. Inside, the girl was laughing. A small sound bright as a bell. Lyra's hands curled into fists. Let her try. The nights were getting colder. Lyra sat by the fire in the main room, ledger open on her lap, not reading it. The logs crackled and spat. Orange light danced on the stone hearth. Outside, the wind moved through the pines like something breathing. The girl came downstairs in her nightshirt, barefoot, the carved horse in one hand. Can't sleep? Lyra asked. The girl shook her head, walked over, stood by the fire, warming her hands. Lyra closed the ledger, set it aside. Sit. The girl climbed into the chair across from her, pulled her knees up, too small for the furniture. The firelight caught her face. Half in shadow, half in gold. They sat quiet for a while, just the fire, the wind, the house settling. Then the girl spoke. Did you have a girl? Lyra's breath stopped. She looked at the child, those dark ancient eyes watching, waiting. Yes, Lyra said. Where is she? The question was simple. Innocent. It gutted her. Lyra stared into the fire. The flames twisted and collapsed and rose again. She died 8 years ago. The girl was silent. Then how? Fell from a horse. Another pause. The girl shifted in the chair, pulled her knees tighter. Did it hurt? Yeah. Lyra's voice was rough. It did. The girl reached down, touched her own left arm. The scars. I fell from a wagon. That's how I got these. Lyra nodded. She already knew. Had known since the moment she saw them. Do they make you sad? The girl asked. Lyra looked at her. Really looked. This small broken thing that had walked into her life like a ghost, like an answer to a question she'd been afraid to ask. No, Lyra said. They make me remember. The girl tilted her head. Remember what? Lyra's throat tightened. She could have lied. Could have said something easy. But the girl was watching her with that steady, unblinking gaze, and Lyra was tired. Tired of carrying it alone. Her name was Selina, Lyra said. She was 9, smart, stubborn. Used to follow me everywhere. She paused, swallowed. We were moving cattle in the east pasture. Spring roundup. Her horse spooked. Jackrabbit. Maybe a snake. Selina went off hard. Landed wrong. She could still see it. The dust rising. Selina's small body crumpled in the dirt. The way her arm bent at the wrong angle. I carried her back to the house. The bone had broken through. 3 places just like yours. Lyra's hands tightened on the armrests. I wrapped it, said it, thought I could handle it, told myself we didn't need the doctor. The girl said nothing, just listened. By the 2nd day, she had fever. 3rd day, she couldn't keep water down. Mrs. Ilara begged me to send for Dr. Hale. I waited too long. Lyra's voice broke. Infection took her. Buried her on the hill behind the house. The fire popped. Embers drifted up the chimney. I was there, Lyra said. Right there. And I couldn't stop it. The girl climbed out of her chair, walked over, stood in front of Lyra, the carved horse still in her hand. You tried, the girl said. Her voice was small but certain. Lyra looked down at her. This child who had every reason to hate the world, who'd been abandoned, scarred, left to die. And here she stood, offering comfort like it cost her nothing. Trying's not enough, Lyra said. It's more than nothing. The words hung in the air. Simple. True. Lyra reached out, hesitated, then placed her hand on the girl's shoulder. The girl didn't pull away. What's your name? Lyra asked. Your real name? The girl looked at the fire. Z? Z? What? Just Z. The people who had me before, they said my mama died when I was born. Daddy was a drifter. Got kicked by a horse in Cheyenne. Nobody wanted to keep me after that. You remember them? Your parents? Zoe shook her head. I just remember moving. Different houses, different people. They'd keep me a while, then I'd go somewhere else. She looked up at Lyra. You going to send me somewhere else? No. You promise. Lyra's chest ached. She wanted to promise. Wanted to swear it on her life, on Selina's grave, on everything she'd ever believed in. But Blackwood's face flashed in her mind. The cold smile, the veiled threats. I'm going to try, Lyra said. Zoe studied her, then slowly she held out the carved horse. Elder Sagebrook said to keep it safe, but I think Selina might want it back. She placed it in Lyra's hand. Lyra stared at the small wooden thing, smooth, worn, a gift from a stranger to a lost girl, and the girl was giving it back, giving it to a dead child she'd never met. Keep it, Lyra said, her voice thick. Selina would have liked you. Zia's eyes brightened just a little. You think? I know. Zee climbed into Lyra's lap, curled up against her chest. The carved horse clutched in both hands. Her breathing slowed, evened out. Lyra sat there, firelight on her face, holding the girl, the weight of her, the warmth. She wanted to save this child. But the truth was uglier than that. She needed to. The summons came on a Wednesday morning. Sheriff Langford wrote it out himself, hat in hand, apologetic. He was an old man, bent from 30 years in the saddle, with a face like cracked leather. "I'm sorry, Lyra," he said, handing over the envelope. Blackwood filed with the county judge. "There's a hearing Friday." Lyra tore it open. Read. Petition for custody and estate settlement. Minor child. Name unknown. Her blood turned to ice. "Estate settlement?" she said. Langford shifted his weight. "Blackwood's claiming the girl's the daughter of a woman named Juniper Hale. Says Hale owed the bank near $2,000 before she died. Blackwood's arguing the girl's part of the estate, that she's got legal claim as creditor. That's insane." That's Blackwood." Langford looked past Lyra toward the house. Zooey was on the porch watching. "You going to fight it?" "Damn right I am." Langford nodded. Put his hat back on. "Good. But Lyra, get yourself a lawyer. Blackwood don't lose in that courthouse." The hearing was set for 10 o'clock Friday morning in the county building, a 2-story clapboard structure that served as courthouse, land office, and tax assessor's hall. Lyra arrived early with Zooey and Dr. Hale. They sat on a bench outside the hearing room. Zee wore her new clothes, brown trousers, white shirt, the wool coat. She looked smaller, somehow fragile. Dr. Hale sat beside her, one hand on her shoulder. "It'll be all right," she said, though her voice lacked conviction. Zooey said nothing. Her hands were folded tight in her lap. The carved horse was in her pocket. Lyra paced. Her boots echoed in the narrow hallway. Every time the door opened, her heart kicked. At 10, they were called inside. The room was small, plain wooden floors, a raised bench at the front where Judge Thorne sat, 60 years old, jowled, eyes like river stones, the county seal hung behind her, faded and crooked. Blackwood was already there, seated at a table with a stack of papers in front of her. She wore her black suit, gold watch chain gleaming. Her lawyer, a thin woman named Quill, sat beside her. Lyra, Zee, and Dr. Hale took the opposite table. Lyra hadn't hired a lawyer. Didn't trust any of them. Didn't think she'd need one. That was her first mistake. Judge Thorne banged her gavel once. "This hearing is called to order. Ms. Blackwood, you filed the petition. State your case." Blackwood stood smooth, calm, like she was discussing the weather. "Your Honor, this is a matter of estate law and child welfare. The girl in question." She gestured toward Zooey without looking at her. "Is Zee Hale, age 6, illegitimate daughter of Juniper Hale, deceased?" Lyra's jaw clenched. "Illegitimate." The word was a slap. Blackwood continued, "Juniper Hale died 2 years ago in Cheyenne, Wyoming, owing my bank $1,800 in unpaid loans. Before her death, she signed a promissory note pledging all assets, including future earnings independence, as collateral." She slid a document across the bench. Judge Thorne picked it up, squinted at it. "The girl is an asset of the estate." Blackwood said, "Under territorial law, creditors have first claim on estate property. Miss Kane has no legal standing. She is not family. She has filed no guardianship papers. She found the girl and kept her without documentation. That is by definition unlawful detention of a minor." Lyra shot to her feet. "That's a damn lie, Ms. Kane." Judge Thorne's voice was sharp. "You will sit down and wait your turn." Lyra stood there shaking. Dr. Hale pulled her arm. "Lyra, sit." She Saturday. Blackwood smiled faintly. I have no doubt Ms. Kane's intentions were kind, but the law is not concerned with intentions. It is concerned with fact, and the fact is this girl belongs to the estate. As primary creditor, I have legal claim. Judge Thorne set the document down. Ms. Kane, do you have a response? Lyra stood again, slower this time. Her hands were fists. That paper's a fake. You have proof. I have common sense. Juniper Hale's been dead 2 years. How convenient. Blackwood finds this note right when I take the girl in. Your Honor, Blackwood said smoothly. The note is dated and notarized. The signature matches county records. Ms. Kane is welcome to contest its validity, but that will require a separate proceeding. Today, we are here to determine custody. Dr. Hale. Judge Thorne said, you examined the girl. Myra stood. I did, Your Honor. She's healthy, well cared for. She's bonded to Ms. Kane. Removing her now would cause significant psychological harm. Noted. Thorne made a mark on her paper. But that doesn't address the legal question. Does Ms. Kane have any documentation, adoption papers, guardianship filing? No, Myra said quietly. But then the law is clear. Thorne folded her hands. The girl is property of the Hale estate until otherwise determined. As primary creditor, Ms. Blackwood has standing. The girl will be remanded to county care pending resolution of the estate. The room tilted. Lyra heard the words but couldn't process them. Couldn't breathe. Zoe made a sound, small, choked. She grabbed Lyra's arm. No, Lyra said, her voice cracked. You will not take her. Ms. Kane, Judge Thorne said. You are not above the law. Then the law is a damn lie. Thorne's face darkened. You are in contempt. One more word and I'll have you arrested. Lyra looked down at Zoe. The girl's face was pale, tears streaming down her cheeks, silent the way she'd cried by the stable. Her hand clutched Lyra's sleeve. Please, Zoe whispered. Please don't let them. Lyra's heart broke. She dropped to one knee, took Zoe's face in her hands. Listen to me. I'm going to fix this. You hear me? I'm going to fix it. Ms. Kane, the judge said, step back. I'm not leaving her. Sheriff Langford stepped forward, reluctant. Lyra, don't make this worse. Lyra stood, her chest was heaving. She looked at Blackwood, that cold, empty smile, and she wanted to put her fist through it, wanted to burn the courthouse down, but Zoe was watching, and Lyra couldn't. 2 women from the county workhouse came in. They were rough-looking, hard faces. One of them reached for Zoe. Zoe screamed. It was the first real sound Lyra had heard her make. High and raw, an animal. She clung to Lyra's coat, fingers tangled in the fabric. Don't touch her, Dr. Hale shouted. But they pulled her away, pried her fingers loose. Zoe kicked, thrashed, sobbed. Lyra, she screamed. Lyra. Lyra lunged forward. Langford grabbed her. Don't. You'll only make it worse. Let me go. Lyra, stop. They dragged Zoe out of the room. Her cries echoed down the hallway, fading until there was nothing but silence. Lyra stood there, breathing hard, staring at the empty doorway. Judge Thorne banged her gavel. This hearing is concluded. Ms. Kane, you are fined $50 for contempt. If you interfere with county custody, you will be arrested. Do you understand? Lyra didn't answer. Do you understand? Yes. Good. Dismissed. Thorne stood, walked out through a side door. Blackwood gathered her papers, nodded to Quill, and left without a word. The room emptied. Lyra stood alone. Dr. Hale touched her arm. Lyra. She pulled away, walked out into the hallway, into the street. The October sun was too bright, too warm. The world kept moving like nothing had happened, but everything had. She'd promised Z she'd fix it, and she'd failed. The house was too quiet. Lyra walked through the front door and stopped, stood in the entryway. The late afternoon light came through the windows in pale gold bars. Dust hung in the air. Mrs. Ilara was in the kitchen. She turned when she heard her, her face crumpled. "Oh, Lyra," she held up a hand. "Not now." She walked past her, up the stairs, down the hall, stopped outside the guest room, Zoe's room. She pushed the door open. The bed was made. The nightshirt folded on the pillow, the tin whistle on the bedside table, the carved horse. No, Z had taken that with her. Good. She'd need it. Lyra walked to the window, looked out at the hills, the cattle moving slow and dark against the grass, the fence lines running into the distance. 40,000 acres, an empire. It meant nothing. She turned away. She went to her study, sat at the desk, stared at the drawer. After a long moment, she opened it. The leather satchel was still there. She lifted it out, unbuckled it. Inside the wooden horse, Selina's unfinished letter, the drawing, and the wildflower, dried now, brittle, still there. Lyra picked it up, held it between her thumb and forefinger. The petals cracked at the edges. Yellow turned to brown. Zoe had put that there. A gift, a bridge between the living and the dead, and Lyra had let them take her. She set the flower down, pressed her palms against her eyes. Her shoulders shook. No sound came out, just the silent wreck of a woman who'd failed twice. Selina's voice in her head. "Mama, why didn't you fight Nziz? Please don't let them." She'd promised. Sworn she'd fix it. And she'd stood there. Watched them drag the girl away. Did nothing. The rage came then, hot and black. She swept the desk clean. Papers, ink bottle, ledger, everything crashed to the floor. The ink spread across the wood like blood. She stood there breathing hard, fists clenched. It didn't help. Nothing helped. Night fell. Lyra sat on the porch in the dark. No lamp, no fire, just the cold and the stars in the sound of the wind through the pines. She didn't know how long she'd been sitting there when she heard the hoofbeats. A single rider coming slow. Elder Sagebrook dismounted in the yard, tied her horse, walked up the porch steps, sat down beside Lyra without asking. They sat in silence for a long time. Finally, Sagebrook spoke. "The girl is at the county workhouse. 4th room from the door. 6 children in there. No heat. Thin blankets. They get 1 meal a day." Lyra's jaw clenched. "How do you know?" I asked. Another silence. "She cried the first night," Sagebrook said quietly. Then she stopped. "That's worse." Lyra's hands curled into fists. "I couldn't stop them. The law. The law is a white woman's game. It bends to money. You know this." "Then what am I supposed to do?" Sagebrook looked at her. Her eyes were dark and steady. "You can still fight." "How?" The judge sided with Blackwood. "If I go near Z, they'll arrest me. Then you must choose. The law or the girl." The words hung in the cold air. Lyra stared out at the darkness. "If I take her, I lose everything. The ranch, my name, my freedom. If you don't," Sagebrook said, "you lose yourself." Lyra's throat tightened. "What kind of life would I give her? Running, hiding, always looking over our shoulders. A life where she knows she was worth the risk." Sagebrook stood, placed a hand on Lyra's shoulder. "Your daughter died because you hesitated. You told yourself you could fix it alone. You waited too long." The words hit like a fist. "Don't wait again," Sagebrook said. "The girl is still alive. You can still choose her." She walked down the steps, mounted her horse, then she turned back. When I was young, she said, my mother told me, a woman who builds walls to protect her heart ends up dying inside them. You built this ranch to control the world, to never lose again. But you cannot control love. You can only surrender to it. She rode off into the dark. Lyra sat alone. The stars turned overhead. The wind died. The world held its breath. She thought about Selena, the small body in her arms, the fever, the infection spreading, the way her daughter's hand had gone limp in hers. She thought about Zoe, the scars on her arm, the silence, the way she'd looked at Lyra that first day, measuring, weighing, deciding if this woman was worth trusting. And Lyra had said, yes, I'm going to fix this. I promise. She stood, walked inside upstairs to Zoe's room, picked up the tin whistle, put it in her coat pocket, went back to her study, opened the satchel, took out Selena's wooden horse, held it for a long moment, then placed it beside the dried wildflower. She closed the satchel, buckled it, carried it downstairs. Mrs. Ilara was still awake, sitting in the kitchen with a shawl around her shoulders. Pack food, Lyra said. Enough for a week. 2 canteens, warm clothes. She looked up at her. Her eyes were red. What are you going to do? What I should have done 8 years ago. She walked out into the night toward the stable, toward her horse, toward a choice that would cost her everything. But this time, she wasn't waiting. The county workhouse sat at the edge of town. 2 stories, grey clapboard, bars on the windows, a single lamp burning by the door. Lyra arrived just after midnight. The town was dark, no moon, just stars and the cold October wind. She tied her horse 2 streets over, walked the rest of the way, boots quiet on the dirt. She carried $500 in her coat pocket, half her liquid cash. The other half was with Mrs. Ilara in case she didn't come back. The night guard was a man named Rook, 40-some years old, drank too much. Lyra knew him from the saloon. Rook sat on a stool by the door, half asleep, rifle across his lap. Lyra stepped into the lamplight. Rook jerked awake, raised the rifle. Jesus, Cain. Easy, Lyra said. She raised her hand slow. I'm not here for trouble. The hell you aren't. You can't be here. I know. Rook stood. Judge said if you came near the girl, I'm to arrest you. I know that, too. Lyra reached into her coat. Rook tensed. Lyra pulled out the money, held it up. $500. Rook stared. That's 2 years' wages, Lyra said. Take it. Go inside. Count to 100. When you come back out, I'll be gone. They'll fire me. Tell them I knocked you out. Show them the money. They'll believe you. Rook looked at the bills at Lyra at the workhouse behind her. They'll arrest you, Rook said. Let them. Rook was quiet for a long moment. Then he took the money, shoved it in his vest. 4th room, left side, doors locked, keys on the hook inside the front office. He walked past Lyra into the dark, disappeared. Lyra waited until she couldn't hear footsteps anymore. Then she went inside. The workhouse smelled of mildew and unwashed bodies. The floorboards creaked. A single oil lamp burned in the office. Lyra found the key ring, took it. The hallway was narrow, dark. She counted doors. 1, 2, 3, 4. She unlocked it. The hinges screamed. Inside 6 cots. 6 small shapes huddled under thin blankets. The room was freezing. No stove. No heat. Lyra stepped inside. Her eyes adjusted. Zoe, she whispered. One of the shapes moved, sat up. Z. Her face was pale in the darkness, eyes wide. For a moment, she just stared like she couldn't believe what she was seeing. Then she scrambled out of bed, ran across the room, slammed into Lyra's chest. Lyra caught her, held her. The girl's arms locked around her neck, shaking, silent sobs against her shoulder. You came, Zoe choked out. I'll always come. Lyra pulled back, looked at her. We have to go now. Can you ride? Zoe nodded. Lyra grabbed the girl's coat from the peg, wrapped it around her, picked her up, carried her out. Behind them, one of the other children whispered, "Take me, too." Lyra stopped, looked back. 5 small faces watching, hoping. Her chest ached. "I can't," she said. "Not tonight, but I'll come back." She didn't know if it was true, but she said it anyway. They rode hard through the dark. Zoe in front of the saddle, arms tight around Lyra's waist. Ember's hooves pounded the dirt. Cold wind screamed past them. By the time they reached the ranch, the horizon was gray with dawn. Dr. Hale was already there, waiting on the porch. She stood when she saw them. "You did it," she breathed. Lyra dismounted, helped Zoe down. The girl's legs wobbled. Lyra steadied her. "Get her inside," Lyra said. "Warm her up. Food, water." Myra took Zoe's hand, led her toward the door, then she stopped, turned back. "They'll arrest you," she said. "I know." It was worth it. Lyra looked at Zoe. The girl was watching her over her shoulder. Small, fragile, alive. "Yeah," Lyra said. It was. They came at sunrise. Sheriff Langford, 2 deputies, and Blackwood in her black suit and polished shoes riding in a hired coach like she was going to church. Lyra was waiting on the porch. Zoe stood beside her. Dr. Hale on the other side. Blackwood climbed out of the coach, smiled. "Ms. Kane, you've made a serious mistake." "No." Lyra said, "I fixed one. You abducted county property. That's a felony. She's not property. She's a child." Blackwood's smile thinned. "Sheriff, arrest her and take the girl." Langford sighed, stepped forward. "Lyra, don't make this harder than it is." Lyra didn't move. "She's my daughter." "She's not your blood," Blackwood said. "She's my choice." "Your choice doesn't matter. The law. The law is whatever you paid for it." Blackwood's face darkened. "Sheriff, do your job." Langford reached for his sidearm. Then the sound of hoofbeats. Everyone turned. Riders coming over the hill. 12 of them. Shoshone elders. Elder Sagebrook at the front. They rode slow, deliberate, and stopped in a line across the yard. Sagebrook dismounted, walked to the porch, stood beside Lyra. "This woman has honored her word," Sagebrook said. Her voice carried like thunder. "We stand with her." Blackwood's face went white. "This is a legal matter." "You have no you speak of law," Sagebrook said. "But law is not justice. Justice is what we do when law fails." She looked at the sheriff. "Will you arrest a woman for saving a child?" Langford's hand dropped from his gun. He looked at Lyra, at Zoe, at the 12 elders on horseback. "I didn't see anything," Langford said quietly. "What?" Blackwood's voice cracked. You work for the county. I work for the people." Langford turned to his deputies. "Mount up. We're done here." They left. Blackwood stood alone in the yard. Her face was red. Her hand shook. "This isn't over. I'll go to the territorial court. I'll have you arrested." "All right, your documents are forged," Dr. Hale said. Blackwood froze. "I've been asking around," Myra continued. Juniper Hale never signed any note. The notary seal is fake. The signature doesn't match county records. You fabricated evidence to steal a child. You can't prove. I can and I will. The silence stretched. The wind moved through the grass. Blackwood looked at Lyra, at Zoe, at the women on horseback. Then she turned, climbed back into her coach, rode away. When the dust settled, Sagebrook placed a hand on Lyra's shoulder. You chose well, she said. Lyra looked down at Zoe. The girl was holding her hand, tight, real. I almost didn't, Lyra said. But you did. That's what matters. The elders rode off. Dr. Hale went inside to make breakfast. The sun climbed higher. Lyra knelt in front of Zoe, reached into her coat, pulled out the leather satchel. This was my daughter's, she said. Now it's yours. Zoe took it, held it like it was made of glass. Selena's. Yeah, but I know, but you're here and she'd want you to have it. Zoe opened it, looked inside, the wooden horse, the wildflower, the unfinished letter. She looked up at Lyra, tears in her eyes. Am I your daughter now? Lyra's throat closed. Yeah, she said. You are. Zoe threw her arms around her. Lyra held her. The girl she'd almost lost. The girl she'd chosen. The girl who'd saved her. The territorial marshal arrived 3 weeks later. Lyra was in the east pasture mending fence when she saw the rider coming, her stomach clenched. Z was in the house with Mrs. Ilara. Safe for now. But the marshal didn't come to arrest her. He came with news. Ms. Kane, the marshal said, dismounting. He was a lean man, grey-bearded with the tired eyes of someone who'd seen too much. Name's Tate. I'm here about Eloan Blackwood. Lyra set down her hammer. What about her? She's been arrested. Fraud, forgery, embezzlement. Turns out she's been running the same scheme on half a dozen estates using fake promissory notes to seize property, children included. Tate pulled a folded paper from his coat. The territorial court reviewed your case. Dr. Hale's testimony was corroborated. The judge who ruled against you has been removed. The girl's yours, legal and binding. He handed Lyra the paper. Lyra stared at it. The word swam. Legal guardianship. Zoe Hale Kane. Minor ward of Lyra Kane. That's it, Lyra said. Her voice was hoarse. That's it. Blackwood's bank collapsed. She'll stand trial in Cheyenne come spring, likely hang or go to prison for life. Tate tipped his hat. You did right by that girl. Not many would have fought like you did. He rode off before Lyra could find words. Lyra stood alone in the pasture holding the paper. The wind moved through the grass. The cattle lowed in the distance. Zoe was hers. Not by blood, not by accident, by choice, by law, by love. She folded the paper carefully, put it in her pocket. Then she walked home. November came cold and early. The first snow fell on a Thursday morning, light, dry, dusting the hills like flour. Zoe stood at the window, breath fogging the glass, watching it fall. You ever seen snow? Lyra asked. Zoe shook her head. Come on. They went outside. Zoe held her hand out, catching flakes. They melted on her palm. She laughed, a sound Lyra was hearing more often now. Small and bright and real. It's cold, Z said. Wait till January. This is nothing. Z looked up at her. Will I still be here in January? Lyra's chest tightened. Yeah, you'll be here. Promise? Promise? Zoe smiled, ran out into the yard, arms spread spinning, letting the snow catch in her hair. Lyra watched from the porch. The ache was still there. Would always be there, but it was softer now, less like a wound, more like a scar healing. They started rebuilding the stable in mid-November. The old one, Whitaker's place, where Lyra had found Zoe, was too far gone. Walls rotted, roof collapsed. But Lyra wanted to save it, make it something new. She and Zay worked side by side. Zay carried nails, handed tools, held board steady while Lyra hammered. Her hands were small but willing. Why are we fixing it? Zoe asked one afternoon. Lyra paused, wiping sweat from her forehead despite the cold. Because something broken doesn't have to stay broken. Zoe thought about that. Then she smiled. Like us. Lyra looked at her. This girl who'd been abandoned, scarred, left to die, who now stood in the November cold, covered in sawdust, smiling. Yeah. Lyra said, like us. On a clear Saturday, Lyra brought out Selina's horse. She was old now, 15 years, but still sound, gentle, the same mare Selina had ridden. Zoe stood in the corral, eyes wide. That's her, the one she fell from. Yeah. Aren't you scared? Lyra had been terrified. But she was tired of fear winning. No, she said. Are you? Z looked at Ember, then at Lyra. Will you teach me? That's why I brought her out. They started slow, walking beside the horse, letting Zoe touch her, stroke her neck, feed her apple slices. Then Lyra lifted her into the saddle. Zoe's hands gripped the horn. Her face was pale. I got you, Lyra said. I'm right here. They walked in circles, slow, patient. Zoe's fear gave way to wonder. By the end of the hour, she was grinning. Can we go faster? Zoe asked. Not today. Tomorrow? Lyra laughed. Maybe. The next day, they did go faster. Zoe bounced in the saddle, holding tight, laughing. Ember broke into a trot. Zoe's hat flew off and then she slipped. Lyra's heart stopped. Zoe hit the ground soft into the dirt and rolled. Lyra was off her own horse in a heartbeat, running, her mind screaming. Not again. Not again. Not again. But Zoe sat up, dirt on her face, hair wild, grinning. I'm okay, Mama. She said, Mama. Lyra stopped. The word hit her like a fist. Zoe had never called her that before. I'm okay, Zoe said again. She stood brushing off her trousers. Can I try again? Lyra stared at her. This girl, not Selina, not a replacement, not a ghost, Zoe. And it was beautiful. Yeah, Lyra said, her voice thick. You can try again. That night, Zoe sat at the kitchen table, the leather satchel open in front of her. She'd added things to it. A feather Elder Sagebrook had given her, a smooth river stone, a drawing she'd made, crude but earnest, of Lyra and herself standing in front of the house. She held up the wooden horse. Selina's horse. Can I keep this? She asked. It's yours, Lyra said. But it was hers. She'd want you to have it. Zoe studied the carving, ran her thumb over the worn edges, then she placed it back in the satchel. Carefully, reverently. Do you think she knows? Zoe asked. That I'm here. Lyra sat down across from her, reached over, placed her hand on Zoe's scarred arm. Yeah, Lyra said. I think she knows. Zoe looked at their arms, the scars side by side. Not identical. Close but not the same. 3 lines on one, 3 on the other. Different stories, same ending. We match, Zoe said softly. We do. Zoe closed the satchel, buckled it, pulled it close. The scars on their arms would never match perfectly, but their hearts finally did. Winter broke in late February. The snow began to melt. Water ran in the ditches. The hills turned from white to brown to the first faint green. The air smelled different. Thawed earth, pine sap, something alive. Waking up. Lyra threw a gathering at the ranch on the last Saturday of the month. Nothing fancy, just people she trusted, people who'd stood with her. Dr. Myra Hale arrived first, driving her buggy, black bag in the seat beside her out of habit. She brought apple pie and a new book for Zoe. Robinson Crusoe. Figured she'd like a story about someone who survived, she said. Elder Sagebrook came on horseback with 3 of the elders. They brought smoked venison and a woven blanket for Zoe. Wool and deer hide stitched with a pattern of horses running. The ranch hands came too, 8 of them, women who'd worked Lyra's land for years. They'd seen her cold and distant for so long. Now they saw something different. They brought whiskey and tobacco and rough jokes that made Mrs. Ilara swat them with her apron. Zilly was everywhere, running between the adults, showing them the rebuilt stable, the horse she'd learned to ride, the satchel she carried like treasure. She talked more now, still quiet, still careful. But the silence wasn't fear anymore. It was just who she was. Lyra stood on the porch watching. Myra came up beside her, cup of cider in her hand. "She's different," she said. "Yeah, so are you." Lyra glanced at her. She was smiling, not teasing. "Just true." "She did that," Lyra said. "You both did." She sipped her cider. "You know the whole county's talking about you. Let them. Half think you're a saint. Other half think you're insane. What do you think?" She looked at her for a long moment. "I think you're a mother." After dinner, roast beef, potatoes, cornbread, pie. They gathered in the main room, fire roaring, lamps lit. The windows fogged from the warmth inside. One of the ranch hands, old Nora Greer, pulled out a harmonica, started playing a slow tune. Another woman joined in, tapping rhythm on her knee. Zilly sat cross-legged by the fire, watching. Her fingers twitched like she wanted to join, but didn't know how. Lyra leaned over. "You still got that whistle?" Z's eyes lit up. She reached into her pocket, pulled it out. "Go on," Lyra said. Z hesitated, then she lifted it to her lips. The first note was shrill, off-key. The second wasn't much better, but by the third, she found the melody. Clumsy, unpolished, but real. The harmonica adjusted, the rhythm followed, and suddenly there was music. Z played the song Lyra had taught her, Selina's song, the one about a river and a girl, and a promise kept. When she finished, the room was quiet. Then Nora clapped. The others joined in. Z's face went red, but she was grinning. "Not bad, kid," Nora said. "Give it a few more years, you'll be better than your old lady." Z looked at Lyra. Was Selina better? Lyra smiled. She was louder. Everyone laughed. Later, when most of the guests had left, Elder Sagebrook and Dr. Hale sat with Lyra on the porch. The night was clear, cold, but not bitter. Stars scattered thick across the sky. Zilly was inside with Mrs. Ilara trying to teach the dogs to dance. They could hear her laughing through the window. "She's happy," Sagebrook said. "Yeah." Lyra couldn't stop the smile on her face. "She is." Myra pulled her shawl tighter. "What will you tell her when she's older about how she came to you?" Lyra thought about that. "The truth that I found her, that she saved me, that we chose each other." "That's a good story," she said. "It's the only one that matters." They sat quiet for a while. Then Sagebrook spoke. "Your daughter would be proud." Lyra's throat tightened. She looked at the sky, the stars, the infinite dark, and the infinite light. "Which one?" she asked quietly. Sagebrook smiled. "Both." Inside, Z had given up on the dogs. They were too stubborn. Now she was lying on the floor, the carved horse in one hand, the tin whistle in the other, staring at the ceiling. Mrs. Ilara sat in her chair, knitting. "What are you thinking about, lamb?" "Mama," Z said. "What about her?" Zoe rolled onto her side, propped her head on her hand. "Do you think she's still sad about Selina?" Mrs. Ilara's needles paused. She looked at the girl, 7 years old now, too wise for her age. "But maybe that was what hurt did. It made you grow up fast." "I think she'll always miss Selina," she said gently. "But I don't think she's sad anymore." "Because of me?" "Because of you. And because she finally let herself live again." Zoe thought about that. Then she sat up. "Mrs. Ilara." "Yes. I'm glad I cried by that stable." Her eyes filled. She set down her knitting. Come here. Z climbed into her lap. She held her. This girl who'd been thrown away, who'd been broken and left and forgotten, who was now loved. Me too, lamb, she whispered. Me, too. Outside, the night deepened. Lyra stood at the porch rail, looking out at her land, the hills, the fence lines, the stable they'd rebuilt together. All of it still here, still hers. But it didn't matter the way it used to. What mattered was inside. Laughing, playing a terrible tin whistle, teaching dogs to dance. Myra stood to leave. I'll check on you both next week. We'll be here. She smiled, climbed into her buggy. Sagebrook mounted her horse. They rode off into the dark. Lyra stayed on the porch. A few minutes later, the door opened. Zilly came out wrapped in the blanket Sagebrook had given her. She walked over, leaned against Lyra's side. Cold? Lyra asked. A little. Lyra put her arm around her, pulled her close. They stood there watching the stars. Mother and daughter, not by blood, by something stronger. Mama. Yeah. Do you think spring will come soon? Lyra looked at the hills, at the first green pushing through the snow, at the water running in the creeks. Yeah, she said. I think it's already here. Z smiled, closed her eyes, safe, warm, home. And for the first time in 8 years, Lyra felt the same. March came soft and golden, the rebuilt stable stood against the morning sky. New wood, strong frame, the smell of pine still fresh. Lyra and Ziri had hung the doors 2 days ago. Tomorrow they'd move the horses in. But this morning was different. Lyra woke early, found Ziri already dressed, sitting on the porch steps, the leather satchel in her lap. You're up, Lyra said. Z looked back at her. I want to go see her. Lyra understood. They saddled the horses, rode up the hill behind the house. The grass was wet with dew. The sun was just breaking the horizon, pale gold bleeding into blue. Selina's grave was marked by a simple stone. Selina Kane, 1878 to 1887, beloved daughter. Lyra hadn't been up here in months, maybe longer. They dismounted, stood in front of the stone. Zoe held the satchel tight. After a moment, she knelt, set it down on the grass, opened it. Inside the wooden horse, the dried wildflower, Selina's unfinished letter, the drawing, the feather, the river stone, Zoe's own drawing of the house. Zoe lifted out the wooden horse, turned it over in her hands. I think, Z said quietly, she should have this back. Lyra's throat closed. Ziddy placed the horse at the base of the stone gently like it was made of glass. Thank you, Z whispered. For sharing your mama. The wind moved through the grass, soft, steady. Lyra knelt beside her, placed her hand on the stone, cold, real. I'm sorry I waited so long, Lyra said. To Selina, to God, to herself. I thought if I didn't come up here, it wouldn't be real. But you're gone, and I can't change that. Her voice broke. But Zoe's here. And I think you sent her. I don't know how. I don't know why, but those scars, they brought me back. She brought me back. Z leaned against her. Lyra wrapped her arm around the girl, held her. I love you, Lyra said to the stone. I always will, but I'm not going to hide anymore. She stood. Z stood with her. They didn't speak again. Just stood there. The three of them, living, dead, and the space between. Then Zoe picked up the satchel, closed it, slung it over her shoulder. They walked back to the horses. At the bottom of the hill, Z stopped. Mama. Yeah. Can we plant something up there? Lyra looked back at the grave, the stone, the wooden horse sitting in the grass. What do you want to plant? A tree. So she's not alone. Lyra's chest ached, but it was a good ache. The kind that meant healing. Yeah, she said. We can do that. And they rode back to the house. Mrs. Ilara had breakfast waiting. Bacon, eggs, biscuits. The kitchen smelled like home. Z ate quickly. Then she grabbed the tin whistle, ran outside to play with the dogs. Lyra stood at the window, watched her. The girl's laughter carried on the wind, bright, unguarded, free. Behind her, the satchel sat on the chair, still buckled, still carried, but lighter now. Lyra poured herself coffee, walked out onto the porch. The sun was higher now. The land stretched out green and gold. The cattle moved slow across the hills. The stable stood strong. The house glowed warm. Zoe was in the yard trying to teach the dogs to howl along with the whistle. They wouldn't, but she kept trying. Lyra smiled. She thought about Selena, about the years she'd lost to grief, the wall she'd built, the silence she'd hidden in. And she thought about the girl in the yard, scarred, abandoned, chosen. The girl who'd saved her. Sagebrook had been right. A woman who builds walls to protect her heart ends up dying inside them. But Lyra had torn the walls down. And on the other side there was light. Zoe ran up the steps, breathless, grinning. "Mama, look." She opened her hand. A butterfly, orange and black, wings trembling. "It landed on me," Zoe said. Odd. They watched it together. The butterfly opened its wings, closed them, opened again. Then it lifted off, flew toward the hills, disappeared into the light. Z watched it go. Then she looked up at Lyra. "Do you think that was her?" Lyra didn't answer right away. She looked at the hills, the sky, the world waking up. "Maybe," she said. Z smiled, took her hand. They stood there together, mother and daughter, scarred and whole. The morning stretched out before them, endless, full. And for the first time in 8 years, Lyra wasn't afraid of it.